Okay, welcome back to House Human Services. We are here to pick up our discussion of pre-K, and we are going to start off with Representative Bishop's proposal, sort of two-part proposal. So I'm going to, do you want to, we don't need the background because I think you told us the background, but do you want to review the language? Do you want to have Katie review the language or Beth, or how do you want to do it?
I would rely on legislative counsel if we're going
Okay.
to review it.
All right, that sounds good.
Can I give a 1 minute? lead
Yes,
in?
oh, absolutely. I just didn't, I was just, yeah, absolutely. Go ahead.
So I think we've come to learn, or in even greater detail, this is sort of a fragile system. Many aspects of it, it works, but it's fragile. And what the language that I've offered is out of a place of being concerned about the workforce fragility that's part of this system. And while I agree with and appreciate the direction of our discussions about equalizing both pay and qualifications with respect to the delivery of universal pre-K, I have concerns about the ability in the private aspect of this mixed delivery system to currently meet that. So out of a concern about moving too fast, or to give some cover, if you will, in the meantime, till we can get the private sector on par, as is the goal expressed here in the committee. I suggested that perhaps we have a two-tier. One, well, we'll go through the tiers, but basically maintaining sort of current level of payments for those who are meeting the current requirements in the private setting, but as a private setting is able to meet the enhanced licensed provider in the classroom, they would be eligible for the higher pay.
Thank you. Thank you, Katie and Beth.
Of the document. So Katie McMahon, Legislative Council.
That's St. James Office of Legislative Council.
So I've pulled open the document, and I'm on page 4. That's where the first change is. And this creates a tiered system of rates for private providers. Public providers would be operating under one rate. So this is sort of a two-part amendment because we make some language changes here, and then there's some more specific language making the rates work. So for the purposes of a licensed private provider, they could choose one of two options. They could employ or contract the services of at least one teacher. So that's sort of the status quo of what's happening now. Or under,
Sorry. Is this draft 2.2 of Doug's?
Yes.
Okay. Oh, you're on page 4. Okay.
Yep.
That answers
The
my
language is it's highlighted.
Gotcha. Okay.
Good. Okay. And then the second option for private providers is to ensure the pre-K education is provided by a teacher who is licensed and endorsed in certain early childhood education or early childhood special education. So that would be consistent with what is required of the public providers. So private providers would have the choice between the two. And then we have the language in B that's specific to public providers, and that isn't changing. It's still as under your amendment.
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
And then I will move on. So Beth, I'll let you discuss the two rates unless you're
Sure.
for something else.
Nope. I can't see through your.
Oh,
no,
okay,
wait,
good.
but I have my own computer.
There you go.
Okay, so we're gonna move to page 5, line 10. So currently there's one statewide rate. Now we're gonna have 2 rates. So annually, the agencies of Education and Human Services shall establish 2 statewide tuition rates. We keep the same qualification that the rates may be adjusted regionally and that the process is jointly developed and implemented by both agencies. If we get to the language that Katie and I have drafted from yesterday, you'll see additional changes regarding approval by the General Assembly, but that's not in this draft. The first rate established by the agencies, what shall be the highest rate, shall be for pre-qualified providers that provide pre-K education through a teacher who is licensed and endorsed in early childhood education or in early childhood special education under Chapter 51 of this title. This rate shall be paid to all public pre-qualified providers. School district, in order to teach in a public school, you have to be licensed anyway. And any private pre-qualified provider that provides pre-K through a license.
Or by.
I think we can debate word choice if you choose to go with this language.
Okay, thanks.
I would honestly defer to the field on what makes the most sense to them. I'm not sure that through or by.
It just through to me implies that something could continue in the way that it is now.
Okay.
I would agree.
We'll debate the language if we decide to go with this.
I was thinking of it as the vessel of the teaching.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I hear you. If one person's confused, then more than one person's going to be confused.
Okay.
The second rate established by the agency shall be for pre-qualified private providers that employ or contract for the services of at least one teacher who is licensed and endorsed in early childhood education or in early childhood special education, but such teacher does not actually teach pre-kindergarten education within the classroom or classrooms operated by the pre-qualified private provider. And then a district shall pay tuition upon receiving notice from the child's parent or guardian that the child is or will be admitted to the pre-K program. That's current law. I don't know why it's highlighted.
Okay. Okay.
Then I don't think we changed anything. I don't think we changed anything else for option 1.
Okay. Okay, so there's option 1, and then there's option 2. Let's look at option 2 so we know what we're considering. Which is it's noted on page 13. Yeah.
Option 2, we have the single rate for the whole state. So we don't have the tiered rates. And we're using, striking through the existing language, for private providers, allowing them to maintain the current status quo. Everyone would be moving to what we're now calling the public, provider rate, and requirement for a teacher. And what's important here is the effective date, which is that would take effect July 1, 2031.
And the provisional licensure. Is that something that would be in either option 1 or 2?
Yes, I think it could be, and I'm not sure this language is necessary based on our conversation that we had yesterday, if you want to allow the current process to play out.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Okay. So we essentially have the option 1, 2 rates based upon 2 different qualifications on the private side. Public side stays as is essentially, which is requires licensed teacher. Or we have everybody needs to be licensed, but those who are not licensed currently have a ramp, which to be honest, I was going to suggest be 7 years, which is longer than the one that is here, but it would recognize that most of these folks are going to be working and probably doing this part-time. It would give additional time to gain your teaching credentials if you're not already. So what are thoughts of the committee? I'll tell you my thoughts if you want to know my thoughts. I'm looking at me, but my thoughts are, I have a hard time with the differential rate. And, I've spoken to Representative Bishop about this. Yeah. I have a hard time with the differential rate because it is setting up 2 different classifications of pre-K. And I don't think that that's good policy. I recognize the reasoning behind it totally. But if we are looking at saying that we want to improve equity in the system, it doesn't do that. And so I personally go for the option with a slightly even longer ramp date of 7 years from whenever this is enacted. So that's one of the things that I wanted to ask for a little bit of clarification about, because we've talked about all the changes being effective whenever the foundation formula goes into effect. But I would want the teacher qualification to go into effect whenever this bill passes, so that that 7 years starts now, as opposed to 4 or 5 years or 2 years or whenever the
Mhm.
foundation formula ends up starting. Okay. So that's my thoughts, but.
So that was my reaction as well. I just think, you know, if even in the long term, a private provider, doesn't want to get into, you know, the pre-K provision, they can keep doing what they're doing in terms of childcare. But if they want to be doing pre-K, then I think they need to, and be, you know, paid by the state for pre-K. I think it should be the same criteria as for any pre-K. I mean, I don't think we should have two different quality levels offered of pre-K for what's supposed to be a universal pre-K system.
Other thoughts by people?
I would just add that I appreciate, particularly with the extension of the date out to, I believe we now be looking at 2033. And I hope that our private pre-K setting can get there with respect to having licensed teachers in the classroom. It's been a struggle. I'm not sure what's going to help us turn the corner on that. So I don't know that there's any guarantee that that will be in what time frame that will be available to us in the private sector. And it's ultimately, for me, the eye is on having as robust offerings for mixed delivery as possible, and that there is an impact that UPK, I think, would have on the broader spectrum, that if a program can't participate in UPK, is it still as strong as we want those providers to be in the private setting? Families have different needs, whether it's geographic, whether it's hours of service. I'm still not clear on a picture of how the public school setting provides the same coverage, if you will, for families. So that's just where I'm at. I like the extension of the date, and I would hope that with that aspiration that we would get there.
Well, one of the things that I was just thinking about is that as the vice chair has said, CDD, we have resources in the system now for private providers in terms of professional development. So I'm wondering, maybe something for us to consider is directing prioritization of professional development to focus on pre-K licensure. That might be tying their hands a little bit too much, but it could be we suggest, you know, so that there's some prioritization of that, but. Yeah, go ahead.
No, I said catching the thought, because the same concerns that is the same concern, like the bill, the policy's great. It's not an issue of the policy. My concern is kind of, do we have the infrastructure, the capacity to execute this? And when I'm looking at, yes, it can be managed, but like bringing up the point, could it be more to put on the plate of Office of Professional Regulations or the like? Yeah, but it's probably needed. These things need to be, you know, executed and with a timeliness to where it's achievable. And I feel that, again, great policy, not disputing the policy, just looking at it. Can this be rolled out, executed to where it doesn't possibly result in losing some positive outcomes? So the concerns, I support where Doug's going, because it provides that I guess what I'm getting at is we got to extend some of these timelines of when this stuff's going to be implemented.
And that's why I think, are you saying that you're supportive of this? I added actually 2 years, I think.
2 years.
2 years to what Doug was suggesting, because I think And most of these folks are going to be working as well as, trying to further their education.
Yeah.
And, I was actually impressed by the educational attainment and process that people are working on that Ray shared earlier. And that was particularly with regard to home-based folks, that, the majority of them already have their teaching license. And, one of the things, the reason that we're having a say in this at all is because we have jurisdiction on the private side. And so I'm also looking at this as a way to make the private side competitive with the public school system in terms of qualifications of the staff. Because parents make decisions based upon those kinds of things, as well as, not needing to provide transportation in between, partway through the day and needing to go to pick up and all of that. So,
And just quickly to
Yeah.
that point, there are times when we up the bar, so to speak. We need to make sure that we have mechanisms and guardrails in place that don't unstabilize what is currently stable. And what I mean by that, there are some daycares or pre-K providers that don't have the capacity at this time to hit those standards. Therefore, let's make sure we have the appropriate mechanisms into place to continue to support them until they can get up to those standards without unstabilizing that system as a whole.
so,
Yeah, so I'm just, not that a future legislature might not do that on their own, but it might be good to have like a check-in at 5 years. How many have attained it? Because obviously the legislature in the future can always delay the implementation date if it's turning out to be a real struggle. People are working towards it, they can't get there, we don't want to lose homes. That safety valve might be reassuring if it's, if we have a check-in in place.
we
that will assess-
could ask for a report on the status of the educational attainment of private providers.
Because that also reminds a future legislature to be looking at it.
I think that's a good idea. So are people okay with going with the 7 years, with a check-in? I think, maybe after 4 years.
4 years.
After 4 years, to allow there to be some time for, modification if there needs to be modification.
And though we're already collecting the data, I believe, on how many of these private providers, like where they are, where they serve.
Yes.
So that should be at the same time. And sure, it's a report that's also, but it'd be good to have them side by side,
Yeah. I'm not seeing no no's. I'm not seeing no no's. Okay, so let's go with the 7 years. I report back in 4 on educational attainment and making sure that this provision, the timelines for this provision, the effective date, however you guys do your magic about effective dates. I'm not exactly sure how it would be called. Okay. Thank you. And thank you, Doug, for doing the deep thinking about that and bringing that forward. So let's us move to some of our financial questions that we had, all the places where I wrote Ask JFO on this. So this section for just in-kind payments. So we have, however many of you want to join us at the table up front, you're welcome to join us. I know, or you can just sit there if you want, but it would be nice if at least one of you came up to the front so we can, it's all good. You can take, one of the chairs here. It appears that Representative Nielsen's not going to be joining us and Representative Eastis is online.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, good. Yeah, so that's fine.
They rule.
Oh, man. Just to let you know, just to let folks know that if there is a roll call called on the bill that's currently on the floor, we will be going down. Yeah. Thank you. I believe that the roll.
Yeah,
What I mean-
more than anticipating, you have information.
I heard there was going to be, yes.
That's why I asked you, because I didn't want to miss it.
Oh, no, we'll be going downstairs for a roll call if there's a roll call. Okay, So, I have had, I have had some conversations with, one brief conversation with Emily and Ted. Oh, maybe you should introduce yourself for the record, just.
Hi, I'm Julia Richter, AFO. I focus on the education fund and education financing. That's why I'm here.
Emily Byrne, Deputy with Joint Fiscal Office. Did a lot of pre-K stuff this summer.
Hi, Burnett, Joint Fiscal Office on the revenue team, but also did a bunch of pre-K stuff this summer.
So first up, can you describe for us, we understand Act 73 requires an additional, something that you've got an RFP for out now?
Sure. Yeah, so Act 73, Section 45A, charged the Joint Fiscal Office with going out to contract with a contractor to look into and to come back to the General Assembly with recommendations regarding a number of things. I'm happy to, excuse me, I'm happy to share the scope of work. It's been posted online in a few different places, but essentially what that is recalculating the base and weights, as well as providing recommendations for other foundation formula related pieces, such as provision of CTE and sparsity, things that are a little, I think, less directly connected to this conversation.
Right.
I will clarify that the scope of work, the calculation of a pre-K weight is outside of the scope of work of that contract that we are currently under contract with.
And so why?
Because the language did not include
That's what we asked.
did not include the requirement for JFO to look at a pre-K weight.
So, so does it address pre-K at all?
I can't speak to what the contractor's final report will say, and I will say that pre-K falls outside of the scope of work of the contract that we have entered into.
Okay, well, that's helpful to know. I think, so part of what we are trying to do in this committee, and hopefully it will carry over into the Education Committee and the Ways and Means Committee, is to have people understand that pre-K is part of the K to 12 continuum. So it's pre-K to 12, not just K to 12. And so, and that's on us to make sure that when we're reading proposed language, that it doesn't just, isolate pre-K off as an add-on someplace. So it doesn't sound like we have an opportunity to make a change in that at this point in time. Is that right?
Yeah, so the contract has been executed. We're working with a contractor, AIR. The report is due back to the General Assembly next December. That said, I think that if there were to be a request from the General Assembly for us to amend the scope of work, we could talk to our contractor, but that would require changing the scope of work and sort of reopening some of those contract negotiations.
So, okay. And so you have a signed contract?
Correct.
Okay, and is that contract within the appropriation that was set for it?
Yes.
Is there any room in that appropriation?
No, we were appropriated, JFO was appropriated $400,000. And the contract is based on deliverable, but
Yeah.
assuming that we receive all deliverables,
It
it
will
will be
utilize them.
400,000.
Okay, so I feel like we want to make a recommendation around the how payment, we think, given a mixed delivery system, could work better than the use of weights, and that's through it's the C word that I always forget.
Categorical aid.
Thank you. I always want to say contingency, and it's not contingency, I know that, through categorical aid. And I'm just wondering, it would be helpful, I guess. I think we should at least propose it in our language, and then, the people across the hall and downstairs can decide if they want to keep it. But I think that we should propose that there be an amendment to the work that is already started on that, because if we don't, then I'm just trying to figure out how are we going to make the decision about, are you folks, do you feel like you have the tools in order to evaluate different payment options for pre-K? Or should we be asking to increase the resources for that contract and the scope of that work?
So I'll answer part of that question and then defer to Emily and Ted. With respect to the contract specifically, I honestly don't know if we were to go to AIR and say, you know, we'd like to amend the scope of work and give you additional monies, and can you do this work for us? If they would consider that within their bailiwick and if they would be able to do that work. So that would be a conversation we would need to have with them. As to if we're in a position to recommend a payment, I certainly am not. Emily and Ted worked on the report over the summer.
Right, I would say probably not, and I think the problem is there's a chicken and egg issue, right? Hard to recommend a weight if you don't know how pre-K fits into the greater end transformation picture, right? So if the instruction is it's 10 hours, it's this age group, and it's provided in this way in these places, right? Then maybe either AIR with J, like, then we could maybe, and like we wanted to run through the education funding formula. That drives like, okay, then we model that out, right? Versus we want it to be categorical aid and it's going to be the, like that. So there's, it's hard to answer that question. It's hard to even direct a contractor, right? Come up with a weight for a program, but we're not and we're going to keep it exactly the same as it is, or we're not, right? And I think that was part of the challenge, is that there was a lot of those questions remained unanswered with Act 73 and why it wasn't explicitly addressed.
Why we're here right now.
Exactly.
So this is what I'm taking away from what y'all are saying, is that you need more information, which we are providing guidance in the bill. We're sticking, I think, right now at 10 hours, because we're opting for equalized payments between private and public. And we're keeping 3-year-olds in, same with 4-year-olds, so they would be having the same thing. So those, and the professional qualifications. So I don't think anybody on this committee is tied to weights or categorical aid. What we're tied to is equal payment between public and private. How that occurs, I think, is an open question. And honestly, I don't think that we necessarily, I'll speak for myself, feel qualified to say this is categorical is better than, inclusion as a weight in a formula. The V's were looking for a weight of 1.0 this morning. They're going to continue to advocate for that. And I doubt that they're going to get that with, 10 hours a week. It's not logical. So I'm feeling less like, I'm feeling like we need more information from people who can evaluate one versus the other, given the parameters that we have and maybe some outline of things that we want people to understand. So we don't want it to be an add-on. We want it to be inclusive within ed spending. So I think I guess where I'm thinking about now, given our deadline of having to get language out tomorrow, I'm thinking that maybe what we should be doing is instructing JFO and providing resources to do it, to contract or seek, not, it could be an amendment to the existing contract, or it could be a different contractor or whatever, but to seek someone who is able to evaluate, different funding mechanisms, both a categorical or inclusion in the weight. And it seems like it would be simpler if it were the same contractor, if they are able to entertain, otherwise somebody new is going to have to coordinate with them anyway, because they're doing the rest of it. Does that seem like a direction that you think is a good direction, or something that you can be is doable?
I mean, having only 30 seconds to think about it.
You'll have other times.
Possibly. I think
It seems better than instructing you to do it
yeah,
at JFO.
yes. And I think there's still, and this is, you know, we talked a lot about like what goals are, right? Like, and what would the goals be of one or the other, and what sort of behaviors would likely, you know, like what are you trying to get the schools to do versus what private providers do? And depending on how that funding mechanism works and how it's implemented will change whether or not a school district decides to provide all-day pre-K anymore, if it does currently, or if it decides to increase its offerings, right? Like those, how you decide to allocate the money is gonna push and pull on the system that way. So thinking through, yeah, like how, like, again, it's back in that chicken and egg place, right? Like, what is the hearing that is sort of like the goal of equal payment, but then sort of that spins into like, okay, if they get equal payment, that's going to interact with other pieces of the funding system. And then what will the outcome ultimately potentially, we don't actually know what the outcome will be, but what do we think sort of foresee that outcome to be in terms of who's providing services, for how long, and for how many kids?
Yeah, I mean, all
Does
of
that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, I think because this is a voluntary thing, it's based on parent or guardian choice, you know, whether they choose one or the other or none. You know, those are all gonna be based on best estimates of what we, you know today, and, you know, what we see down the line in terms of, you know, the number of kids who will ultimately enter the system, the education system. So, you know, we're not gonna be, you know, you're not gonna get any estimates from us about that. And I know you're not expecting that. I'm just trying to give language to House Education in ways and means that can be clear enough in terms of the direction and not be contrary to things that are already underway. But I guess what we're seeing is that folks haven't thought about pre-K in the way we would like people to think about pre-K, which is part of the education system and not this sort of like off to the side and, oh yeah, we have to think about that.
We may need an intent section.
Yeah, we may actually need an intent language to make that clear. So there's a couple of specific questions, because we have to be back on the floor by 4. So we only have an hour dispensation to be off the floor. So do you have computers in front of you?
Yes.
Yeah.
Can you look at, well, I'm looking at draft 3.1, but I understand that we have a new draft on the website.
Yeah. It's, it,
5.3.
I just have. Yeah, it's 5.3. Under today is Wednesday. Yeah.
Was conscious I was rushing it, so I left my laptop on the floor.
Okay. All right, 5.3. It was on page 7. Let's see if it's close to page 7. Okay, so we're asking questions about this language and nobody in the room, Ledge Council or us, could really understand it. And it is on version 5.3. It is on page 7. It's essentially lines 10 through 16. Talking about private providers that are not pre-qualified.
You see the page number again, sorry?
7. With green.
So to clarify, is the question the extent to which people are,
We don't know what it means.
I will say my immediate reaction is to confirm, I would want to check with Janet McLaughlin at CED whether there are actually private providers who aren't pre-qualified who are working with school districts. My assumption was always that private providers who were receiving tuition payments were pre-qualified and that was the extent of the system. But I would want to confirm with CDD that my understanding of that section, that's what it would permit folks to do and what folks are actually doing it.
Is this section permitting non-pre-qualified providers to work with school districts?
To help them fulfill requirements that would essentially be substantially the same as if they're pre-qualified.
Right.
Yeah, I don't, that would be my like not lawyer reading of this. To be clear. But
Is that what you
yeah,
think it means?
Sorry, as Beth St. James Office of Legislative Counsel. I read lines 10 through 13. The way I read lines 10 through 13 is public school districts can work with private providers that aren't pre-qualified in an effort to get them in a place where they can be pre-qualified. But then I think lines 14 through 16 about in-kind payments is where I have no idea what that means.
I think what we can do is check in with CDD
Okay.
and see if they know anything about this section and get an answer to y'all.
Would there be circumstances where the private provider is contracting with someone and it's the saying that the school district can be the entity which a private provider contracts with?
I really don't know.
Right, like
I'm a little flummoxed, to be honest with you, because through the whole bill, it talks about pre-qualified providers
Right.
and a process for pre-qualification and rules about pre-qualification. And then it's talking about permitting private providers that are not pre-qualified to create partnerships with school districts that enable them to fulfill the requirements of being pre-qualified. But we already say in the bill that because we're now giving the responsibility to school districts, that they would work with AOE, AHS, and other private and public providers to do that. To me, this looks like it's a school district is having some role in helping a private provider become pre-qualified. And that seems like that's CDD's role to me, but
I guess the best reading to make it make sense is that they are helping them check that box of having either a licensed teacher on staff or contracting with someone to meet that qualification. But
since we are saying you have to have a licensed teacher now, I would appreciate any follow-up that somebody could do about like figuring what that means. That would be great. And then I had a whole bunch of questions about pre-kindergarten region, but I don't think that is something that you guys need. So we started messing with language around average daily membership because we were thinking categorical grant. And so a categorical grant they would not then be included in the average daily membership. But now I think I'm going to propose to the committee that we actually need more information from people who are able to help us evaluate which
Yeah.
might be better if we outline the 5 or 6 things that we want to that we're trying to promote, the outcomes.
Right.
And probably then not change those things right now, because they would be changed in the future based upon whatever report we would get back.
Yeah, I would say, at the risk of telling you something that you already know, I would say that in terms of thinking about asking for further work or research into, including it in categorical aid or including it as a weight, the I know that my understanding is that this conversation is happening in the context of Act 73, and education transformation. Categorical aid and its impact and including pre-K as a weight, would have significantly different impacts in our current financing system and in the foundation formula. So I would encourage you, you are going down the route of looking for more work to be done in this space, being explicitly clear as to if this work or recommendations is how pre-K should fit within the foundation formula as contemplated in Act 73, or if there should be a change to current law.
Yeah, I mean, I think that one of the things that, you know, AOE said, and I don't think we had any different intention, is that pre-K would be part of the cost of education, just like fourth grade would be, or just like 11th grade would be. And so I know that some other categorical aid things are sort of outside the foundation formula, and that wasn't our intent with pre-K. The notion about categorical aid was to hopefully simplify the fact, because we're going to maintain a mixed delivery system. So we're making that policy decision. And that we are wanting to ensure that the same payments are made, that the same amount of resources, however you want to categorize it, are made to public and private. And so in talking with the chair of Ways and Means, I thought categorical might make that simpler, and it might not, you know, as more I'm learning. And definitely understanding that it impacts the work that's being done on understanding and defining what would be part of that foundation formula and all, you know, the additional stuff that was in Act 73. So I think that I just think that we don't have sufficient information on which to make a recommendation, but we have sufficient information to say these are the outcomes that we would like to achieve. And we'd like to understand better through work by outside people. What are the implications for the a foundation formula if we did this versus if we did this? You know, here are the outcomes that we want to assure happen. So I think that's probably the best that we're going to be able to do on this right now. But I think the, you know, a couple of the main things that we are wanting to achieve is making an entity responsible, because nobody's responsible right now. And so we do assign the school districts, and actually the V's said that they agree with the school districts being assigned, which I was surprised to hear this morning, but I think they feel some ownership now, you know, in a lot of cases, but achieving more equity of access and qualifications of people in the classroom, and the payment goes along with that. So I think those are things we can lay out clear policy direction on in the bill. And then I think the best we can do on the financing side of it is really to ask for more information, and for that information to be included in whatever comes out of the additional work that is being done now.
We always have fun at JFK. It's like the most fun place.
We thought we were the fun place, so. Okay, other questions for JFO? It's a shift. I mean, you've actually helped us to think about.
Yeah, no, I think it's very helpful.
About thinking about really that, you know, like we try to think that we have opinions about things. They're not always, they need to be based on sound judgment of an understanding of the underlying impacts. And I think we do not know enough about the underlying impacts in order to make a strong recommendation one way or the other. But we do have enough information to say, these are the things that we want to achieve.
Right.
And can lay those out. And I'm sure that Ways and Means will help us with the wording about how to achieve them. Right. Do you have any other questions for us or or things that you were hoping that we would address?
Not from my end.
At this time. Thanks.
Well, this is gonna be the only time for us.
You'll have time with other committees to
Yes.
address what we send.
It's actually, so this is breaking news. So this is actually, we're going to be submitting legislative language, but as an attachment to a memo. And so instead of, which, because this is, the ed, I'm just all tongue tied because this has changed so many times, let me tell you, in the, span of this session. So originally we were starting and everything was going to be added onto this. And so now Ed Committee has got a committee bill going. And that actually makes more sense for our stuff to be added into their bill and not us be the sort of lead on education. So our stuff is going to be added into their bill and then they're going to, do whatever they do with our recommendations, but we are giving them legislative language. So all the stuff that you've done is stuff that we need to, we're going to attach to our memo, but it's not going to be a committee bill. And the good part about that is when they include it in their bill, we will have an opportunity once again to see the bill because we will need to vote on that. Because our part of the jurisdiction of that bill.
Good.
So it will make another visit back here. That's actually the good part about doing it this way.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we get, I know, it's unusual, 2 bites at the apple. Okay. Any other questions? I think that we've done what we needed to do on the JFO side of things. Thank you, really. I don't know if it was, sort of having you in the room helped us to kind of like, get to a place of better clarity, but it definitely helped trying to figure this out. Okay. So on the language side of things, we have a couple more minutes before we have to go back down. I'd like to talk a little bit about the discussion that we had this morning with the folks from the education community around 5-year-olds. I felt like they actually presented a really valid thought. And so just to refresh people's memories, we've gone back and forth about 5 years of age, but is not yet enrolled, or 5 years of age, but is eligible to be enrolled, or something like that. It's dark green. I can't really read through it. But the notion is, they believe, the testimony they provided this morning is that we should limit it to those 5-year-olds who are not eligible to be enrolled. So that 5-year-olds who are eligible to be enrolled should be going to kindergarten and then,
Less. Yeah.
right, then go ahead.
Yeah.
The ranking member had an idea, which I
Which,
think is a good one.
to include, unless the team, the education team and the parents in discussing, best outcomes recommends the child stay in pre-K.
I heard that.
In which case they would be
They'd have that option,
funded.
yeah.
They would have that option.
Right. If it was.
So there's a
Yeah.
valve there for
Yeah.
kids where the right outcome is to stay another year in pre-K.
Yeah.
So what do people think about that? I feel like that sort of threads the needle we were trying to.
No, I think that's
We
good.
were, we,
Some kids aren't ready.
well, and the thing that they pointed out was that in moving, because we're not going to be able to go, at least at the current time, beyond 10 hours. It will enable that child, if they still have some developmental milestones to reach, they'll actually have more time in school, in kindergarten, than they will with pre-K.
Right.
So that will provide them more professional education opportunity, which I thought was a really good point.
I guess my only thought or question is where the ultimate decision-making lies. There's this consultative process, if you will, between folks from the schools and the parents. Where does it rest? I would lean towards, I was a little uncomfortable with the direction we're going. I'm glad we're coming back to eligible for. I would leave it with the school profession.
I would also, I would want to see it collaborative, but it would ultimately be the education team that. Because they're the one who's saying, who's identifying whether or not that child is ready. I mean, there are some kids who it's developmental aspects that would not benefit from a longer day in school, for instance. And who might therefore be right to stay in pre-K, even though, the advantage is that they can't.
Right.
They can't deal with a longer.
So what I'm hearing people at least throw out there is that 4 years of age or is 5 years of age is not yet eligible to enroll, not yet eligible to enroll in kindergarten. And then I'm not sure how unless determined by the school district.
Might need to be a separate sentence.
Right.
This shall not apply if, the 5-year eligibility shall not apply.
Do you know what we're getting
if-
at, Beth?
I think we would just have a provided, however,
Yeah.
and then we can work our wording magic. I do think that the term education team is not a term that we would
No.
have like,
That's my jargon.
yeah, so I think school districts.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so that's 1, 2, 3, maybe 4 times on that one. I don't know, back and forth.
School district personnel, because a school district isn't a person.
Actually, it is in law.
In law,
In law it is,
but we would
yes.
want to include that there has to be input or consultation
Something.
with the parents. That needs to be.
I think that they got
Okay.
the idea. Okay, so the other thing that we heard, and Ray got a little bit more information, on the, I think I'll hold it, on the double fingerprinting.
Oh, yeah,
this
yeah.
morning.
Yeah.
She did, I think that we'll have, Ray, share that information. She asked CDD about this and they came back with a longer answer, which of course wasn't necessarily about fingerprinting. It was about the background check is more than fingerprinting, right? What you were asking about earlier.
There's like.
There's multiple aspects to the background check that includes reference checking, there's a whole bunch of different things. And the CDD requirements are more strict than the AOE requirements. And so, right now, I don't understand. One or the other, it seems as though that we would go with, the ones that, are prevailing, which they have to have a CDD license.
Right, the stricter
so
one, yeah.
just right. And so it seems as though we could come up with language that says the school district's not required to do a background, check if it has already been completed.
Or they can accept as a
Accept as
completed,
complete.
rather than you
Yeah,
don't have to
that's
do
it.
it, sounds wrong.
No, yeah, go ahead.
They can't share information. This is where I run into.
No, but they can accept. They can,
The person.
CDD can verify that a background check has been completed.
And they can accept that as having met the qualifications if CDC has said.
So if they
"We've
approve
cleared them.
somebody.
We've cleared them, okay, we'll
accept that. No, they can't share any of the information because they're not,
Yeah,
only employers can ask for that information.
right, no, I know that.
Although CDD is not the employer and they're the ones asking for the information for all the childcare ones. I don't really understand that.
That's kind of a slippery slope because if they've been cleared, say, 2 years ago, there should be some type of time frame
Oh, we would have to have the, yeah,
implemented.
within the letter.
Yeah, last year, whatever that case
Well,
was.
that currently exists for teachers. I mean, my wife, over the course of her 25 years career, has had her fingerprints done more than once, but it's not annually or twice every 2 years. It's like 5 or 8 years.
Yeah, but what I'm getting at is somebody is been cleared on that thing, but then applies and then they say, oh, okay, we'll accept this. Well, when was it done?
Yeah, you
2,
need,
5.
right, that's right, you need to know.
So if there is some way to work language in that essentially, says you only have to go through one background check process.
Background check has been verified within the last year.
I think that this needs, some assistance from CDD.
A report when you passed Act 76 about, background checks and fingerprints.
Yes, we did. And they came back with, oh, this seems like an unsolvable problem, but, but I understand CDD has actually done quite a bit of work this fall on this issue. And so, maybe what we should do is to, have a placeholder. That might not be the exact language, but that, what we're trying to do is to avoid it happening at the same time. There's no reason for people to have their fingerprints done twice. And if we have a background check that is, has more elements, and we're talking about very young children, go with that. That's what I would say. And if there's a way to do that and maybe ask AOE and CDD to come up with that language. This does not seem like an insurmountable problem.
But people, you mean licensed teachers, licensed under Title 16?
Well, yes, because they're gonna be,
All licensed
All licensed
but not
eventually.
right away.
yeah, but not right away.
So that's why I'm asking, when does it take effect and who does it apply to?
CDD, as I understand it, when they pre-qualify, the people in the classroom have to go through their background check process. And then in the public system, they also have to go through the school. And I don't know what's in education law versus local school district policy.
It's, my internet is working. Background checks are required for teachers by their employer. Trying to think from memory because my internet is not working.
Oh. Let's propose this. So let's propose this, that we put someplace in here that for pre-K teachers in the public school system, because it doesn't impact the private, this is only public, has to go through it twice. So let's at least give them language that we'll propose and then they can shoot holes in it. So language that says that for public education teachers, if they have gone through the private or the CDD background check process, that
Shall be deemed
to have met the
meet
requirements for a
school.
background check for school district.
Wouldn't this also be in the private setting as we move towards, for those teachers who are already AOE licensed, and as we move towards more of them being AOE licensed?
But they're not gonna be in the school.
It's the.
No, but I guess,
Apply to,
I think it may.
Oh.
apply to them as-
if we talk about, right, if we say licensed pre-K teachers who have gone through this, right, and we don't say public or private, yeah, then it applies to both, yeah. Okay, yeah, no, I'm just saying, timing wise, we're being asked to be down on the floor. We're having to play committee musical chairs, other committees are needing to do the same thing, so.
Oh, so they're gonna be up on the floor.
Right, they're
going, right.
no more than 2 committees off the floor.
Okay.
Yeah, and we.